Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of my Weekly Pomodoro podcast in English. This is the first time I record a podcast episode in English, so I'm really happy and really excited for this achievement. But on the other side, I'm also a bit nervous about doing this for the first time in English. So please be nice because it's, as I said, the first time, so I will probably do some mistake even if I work. It's a year now that I work only in English dailies, but it's not the same as creating content and try to explain something for a very long time. So it will be hard for sure. But this is also the main reason why I want to do this. Creating content is mainly for me a way of growing and helping my improvement. And the last piece that I was missing, since I write an English newsletter every week for 8 months now, the only piece that was missing was the podcast. So from today, we will have one English episode and one Italian episode of the Weekly Pomodoro. The reason why I will keep creating content in Italian is just because I want to continue to have content in my native language, because we lack of a lot of content in Italian, and for some people this is makes it a bit hard to learn some things, because not everyone in Italy knows English well enough. So I think it's nice to try to keep creating content in the local language, let's say, to also keep doing something also for the local Italian community. But meanwhile, I will start to internationalize and start this new English episode thing. So yeah, we can start. First of all, thanks everyone for being here. And the first topic I want to explore in English with you is test-driven development. And that was the only choice in my head because it's one of the most important practices I've ever learned, one of the most impacting practices a software developer can learn. So I want to discuss about a topic I wrote about a little bit some time ago now, and I want to retake this topic and go a bit deeper while having a vocal discussion this time. But first, before starting, we have to do the usual things here for YouTube and the other platform that support us, that we use to publish our content. So if you are on YouTube, please follow us, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, leave a comment to let me know what do you think. Every one of these things help the platform to make my content goes around. So it's free, but you help me a lot. And if you are on a podcast platform, Spreaker or Spotify or Apple Podcast, please subscribe to the channel so you are always updated, and feel free to share this episode with everyone that might be interested. And yeah, you can find in description everything I do under the name of Learn Agile Practices, which is I call it online ecosystem of learning content for software developers. I mainly focus on software developers' best practices and agile practices to achieve technical excellence. So we have a newsletter, we have a podcast, we have a blog. So goes on the description, and visit our website to discover everything we have to offer. Okay, so as I said, I want to talk about test-driven development today with you, and the main thing I want to explore and I want to discuss is that, in my opinion, test-driven development is one of the most important, one of the fundamentals practices to learn that enable the ability and the possibility to achieve technical excellence in a software development team. There are some reasons because this practice has this very big impact that lies in the very deep foundation of this practice and why it was created. And we will explore this topic today, and I will try also to explain to you what was my experience with it and why I suggest you to strongly focus on test-driven development if you don't know it, and what impact can have in your career. So let's jump straight into the topic, and let's start from the fact that I know that it's common for some developers to argue against test-driven development. Some people think it's a waste of time, that slow down the development process, and that it's just another, buzzword that doesn't actually deliver what it promises. I know that it's just another, common thinking, but I want to say that usually when I ask to these people what test-driven development means for them, they fall into misconceptions and misunderstanding that are very common with Agile practices. The reason for this is that we still have little history in the industry, even if it's some decades now that the software industry exists, but it's still pretty young compared to others, and we still have, I think, to understand how to learn and teach to new developers properly how to make this work. And most of us just try to do their best, but it's still not common to have high standard in this industry. So this is a very big problem in my opinion, and we are trying to improve things, but it's a long way to take. So I try to explain to these people why they have what misconceptions they have, to try to let them have a better experience with it. I also try to pair and mold program with everyone that is skeptic to try to prove the power of the practice. And I also tried in the past to show them that doing test-driven development doesn't slow me down at all. It's quite the opposite. Today that I'm used to test-driven development, I'm a lot faster with it. It's not having tests or not being able to add tests for some reason to make me slow. So for example, sometimes you read that you can not do test-driven development, for example, when you are doing a spike or an experiment, which is nice in theory. It's a good idea in theory because tests usually help us when the software needs to change. So when you are experimenting, you might do it without tests on if you see it from a specific point of view. But on the other side, I can just tell you that if you do test-driven development, tests are for free. Once you master the practice, you just can't do another approach. It's just slower. So you do that all the time, every time that is possible, and that you don't have any constraint that you can't solve in a reasonable time. So, it's not really that you have a choice, because these become just the better way you have to work. So it's really, really powerful. This is the message I want to send you. It's incredibly powerful. Another problem that I usually see is that people see, developers that are skeptic about TDD or Agile in general, usually think that people that actually support Agile are like part of a religion, of a cult, and we sometimes we have to be honest, and sometimes we fall into the fun side of the thing, and I am a fan of Agile. I can say that I'm a fan. I really think that Agile is an amazing thing, but I need to remember that every time I try to advocate for Agile and its practices, I need to understand that people have history, that I was in their situation. I didn't understand how it was even possible to think to work in such a way. In my head, it looked like it was impossible. It was something impossible to achieve in my head. And then here I am. I do TDD, I know domain-driven design, I know behavior-driven development, I know a lot of practices, and I've used them. And I even know how to bring them in companies that have different culture because I've done it. I've learned to others. I keep mentoring and coaching others. So I'm in a position that it looked to be impossible in my head no more than 4 or 5 years ago. So we have to be nice with people, and we just need to help them make a path that we already did. And I don't think I was a genius to do this. I didn't anything incredible. I just embraced continuous improvement and tried to study every day in small step. And 1% every day, it's a lot in a year, and it's a lot in 5 years. Even just 1 centimeter, it becomes 365 centimeters in 1 year. So it's just that. It's just to be patient and consistent. So I really want to be nice with people and just try to help them. And if they don't want to be helped in that moment, maybe it's just not the moment for them, or they are happy enough and I can't force them. I mean, it's fine. On an ideal world, it's not fine, because ideally we should embrace a better way of working, but change is not easy for human being. We always face changes with fear and with resistance, so it's just normal. Okay, so if we don't accept that, we will never be able to influence people in advocating such practices in an effective way. We will just be part of a fighting, and that's not what I want to do. I want to have a real impact. I want to really prove to companies, to colleagues, to product managers, to CTOs that agile practices make a difference. So that was my premise, to say that TDD is not a universally accepted practices today. It's not that it's not a standard. It's funny for me because we have asynchronous pull request as a de facto standard in our industry, which is a really bad idea in a company context. It was born for open source, and it's a great idea in an open source context, but it's not in a company context. But still, it's a de facto standard, and TDD is not. This is funny. It's also a bit sad and worrying about the industry, but that's also why it's worth to do this kind of content for me. So that's the fact. It's not, it's not a universally accepted practices. It's not a standard, and there are multiple reasons, in my opinion, but I identified some that are probably most impactful than others, at least for what I've seen. We say that there is always a trade-off. I don't think that there is a real trade-off in TDD once you are fluent in it. One of the problem I see is that most people doesn't know how to learn a new practice. I mean, if you just read some articles about TDD, you maybe did some short exercises, and then you start building a big feature in TDD, it will be hard. It's the first time you do it. It's normal. On one side, it's normal, but on the other side, you didn't practice enough before starting. You should ask yourself this before adopting in the real world, in a production code, a new practice or a new methodology or a new technology. Did you practice enough with it? Can you trust it enough? And so on one side, we need to improve our approach to practices and learning, and I can share some tips. I will share some tips later. But on the other side, we need to understand that we will never be 100% ready, and we have to accept that the first time we do a new thing, it will be harder. And of course, if there is pressure, it can be hard, but this is part of some soft skills that we should develop as a professionals. I mean, I am the software developer. I decide how to write software. And I did this and I taught it this way even before I became fluent with agile practices, and therefore I was a lot slower and I was a lot worse as a software developer. A lot. But still, if I have to do the job, I have to decide how to. Maybe I have a more senior person that works with me and I can talk to him, but it's up to me. And not me actually as an individual. What I mean is it's up to the team. If the team decide that learning TDD is a good idea, we have to accept that we might be a bit slower in the development process for a while, for some weeks. But first of all, we are learning, so we will be faster in the future, and our company needs to live for years, not weeks. So it's fine. You will probably not use TDD if you never did it before for a startup, for example, that is creating an MVP for his product. In that context, it might be too dangerous to lose time for learning. You will use things you already know, and that's the same for practices. Okay, you will not use a new language. You will use a programming language that you already know. That's the same. But in a standard context, you should have the time to make mistakes because you are improving. And on the other side, there's always one thing that people doesn't consider when he's thinking about being slower or faster. Unplanned work exists. I always talk about Agile, DevOps, and Lean, and the biggest thing that all these methodologies have in common is that they want to reduce waste. And waste in software is hidden in the most unimaginable things. Features are waste. There is a research that proves that only 20-25% of the features are used every day, and 25% of features on the other side are usually never used. So features are waste. We should approach features as an MVP, iterate, and also monitor the usage of the feature to see if it's really used. Otherwise, we should just drop the code because it's more work to do for maintainability that it's just useless. So waste is also in unplanned work, of course. Unplanned work is made of bugs, problems in production that we, of course, can't expect, and any kind of incident, So TDD reduced this. TDD reduced both of them because TDD will allow you to create the same feature with less code in a faster way, in an easier way. So embracing the YAGNI principle. And this will reduce the cost of the feature. And if you did an MVP of the feature, the cost will be already even more reduced. And then you will monitor and you will understand if that feature is used. And the code is small. You release, if you also pair this with, for example, continuous integration, you will release small pieces of code every time you release, because you release multiple times per day. So even if a bug shows up, you can roll back very easily, and you can probably also bug fix that issue very easily and very quickly because you changed only a few lines of code. So investigating that bug will be easier. And you can also easily add a test that reproduce the bug, and then you can that test will be read, of course, and then you will pass the test. It's just an easier way to work. So you can have the feeling that you are a bit slower while you are producing the code for the first time in the process of the software development, but in the entire process, in the end, you will not be slower even at the beginning because you are still preventing later issues. To go to the end, I want to share a couple of insights about the typical 3 reasons why TDD is feared by people, and also some inputs on how I think you all can improve your approach to learning. About fear of TDD. People doesn't believe in TDD effectiveness, and there are some objective data that we can give. For example, if you have a look at the Accelerate book, one of the practices that is proven to be effective in that book is TDD indeed, because it just enable technical excellence and allow for better DORA metrics. So it's objective, so we should all start to agree on this, but I understand that that's not enough to remove fear. Another thing that it's fear, making people fear TDD, is that they think that it's not okay for their project, because unless you have a specific example in a similar context, typically that's what you think. But spoiler, very special use cases are very, very rare, and usually TDD can still be used in all of them, or at least most of them. So you should be optimistic on this. 99% of software development code bases can easily take advantage of TDD. So you should be positive that you are in this 99% of the world, and if you're not, then you will discover it once you start to make some experiments, but it's very, very rare. And the third point, for what people sometimes fear TDD, is that they think that they are slowed down. As I said earlier, this is just not true, and you can only notice it once you start using it in real world, because you will notice that unplanned work will be reduced. So you basically realize that before there was a lot of ping pong with Q&A, with some tasks that was coming back as a bug or as an incident, or you had to roll back, and all of these problems will be reduced thanks to TDD. So it's only something that you should really give yourself the opportunity to try for more than a week, for some weeks, maybe some months, and try to see what the impact of TDD really is. Then the last point, as I said before, there is a problem with learning in software. I strongly believe this, and there are some things that we can do to improve this, but the main thing we have to accept is that you can't expect to learn on production code. Production code is like the moment of performance for a software development team. If you make a parallel with professional sports, the moment we are writing production code is like the match. It's like the official game. You have to win somehow. So it's not about doing ideal things in that moment. It's about doing what is usual, what you're used to, what it makes you feel comfortable. To make sure that you are comfortable with a practice, which can be TDD, trunk based, whatever, you have to practice before. Professional sport people train every day using the best practices and try to do the ideal things for their sport, specifically for their sport, because these will make this automatic for them. And then when the game comes, they don't have to think, oh, I have to do TDD today. No, you don't have to think about it. You have to have it like a natural thing. It's just what you do. You start doing TDD. So if you really have to force you a lot, it's probably too early. You should practice. How to practice? Well, first of all, don't stop if the company doesn't give you time, because the career is yours. It's your career. Okay, so if the company doesn't give you time, what do? You stay stuck with what you know today and only leave your growth to what you experience every day. And if it's a company that doesn't allow to learn, it's probably not even a very new technology, so you're stuck. You can't remain stuck in your career because you don't want to invest time in yourself, or at least you should be aware of this. Okay, so it's your responsibility to grow for your career. If you want to grow, you have to do it by yourself. So take some time outside work hours for yourself, which means you decide what to study. Okay? And I suggest you approach practices and methodologies with this approach. And for example, you can make some katas in TDD, like the FizzBuzz or Robot Simulator or whatever. Then once katas have become too simple for you in TDD, but it will take probably some days, then you can move to some real coding challenges like building a link shortener or a to-do list app and try to apply TDD on a real project, and then you will probably start to feel confident with TDD, confident at a point that a ticket will come to you, a new piece of code needs to be developed, and you will say, okay, I can try to do this in TDD because I have a clear idea on how to do it. Okay, you need to have a clear idea on the process, and it will naturally come to your mind to do it for the first time, and then you will never stop. Because one thing I can assure you is that I've never heard of someone learning TDD and then coming back. All the people I know that knows TDD only works on TDD then. That's a very big signal because no one regrets the decision of learning TDD. Okay, so we are at the end today of this weekly Pomodoro, the first one in English. So again, sorry, it's the first time I make an entire episode in English, so I'm sure I can improve. I probably talked too much about how I was pronunciating some words and how I was making my sentences, so I will improve. But it's a first, so that's fine. Better done than perfect. So let me know your thoughts. So how can you let me know? You can comment on YouTube if you want, or comment on LinkedIn on my profile. Text on me on private, on Telegram or on LinkedIn if you want, or via email. You can find everything in my website. But the best place to leave your thoughts now is the Learn Agile Practices Telegram channel, because I just post when I publish something, and then we can use the comments there to share our thoughts with the entire community, so we can have a discussion with everyone. Okay, so I just created the channel. It's pretty new, but people will start to come. So come in the Telegram channel and let me know what you think about what I just shared with you. And yeah, we're done for today. So bye bye, and see you next week with the next episode.